In her desperate attempt to protect herself, she placed me in this institution with there was no notice. One day it was like up and gone. Due to these allegations that she posted on social media, my dream of becoming a U.S. Marine was crushed. Now I have to fight and do everything I can to fulfill that dream still. And it's important for her to come forward with the truth, because I want nothing more than to serve my country. This is very important to me. I'm constantly having to defend myself.
Hi, friends. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. It's Monday, September 9th, 2024. Collin Gosselin is blaming his mother, Kate, for his discharge from the military. Collin claims that the discharge from the Marines was the result of a post that his mother made on social media, where she was responding to claims that he made along with his father, John, and his sister, Hannah, in an episode of The Dark Side of the 2000s by Vice TV. Collin, along with Hannah and John, detailed their experiences on reality television and Collin's subsequent placement in a facility for troubled teens. Collin asserted that despite claims by his mother, he did not have the issues that his mother claimed that he had. He had claimed to be singled out by his mother and isolated from everyone in his family, not allowed to eat dinner with his siblings, and placed in rooms by himself. This prompted a social media response by Kate, basically calling him dangerous, saying that she had placed him in the facility following an altercation with him and a unidentified weapon, and that he had a distorted sense of reality, basically trying to discredit anything that he did say. She also outlined that he had numerous mental health issues, and that was why he had been placed in this facility. Collin disputes the fact that he has these diagnoses, and Collin was subsequently discharged for non disclosure of the full pre enlistment history. According to a record that he provided to the Sun dated October 24th of 2023, and it stated that there was a reevaluation following the acknowledgement of prior mental health history, including multiple diagnoses, which were reportedly later discontinued upon reevaluation. The initial recommendation had been returning to training. Subsequently, there was a report that on occasion he let his emotions get the best of him, and one incident of pushing another recruit. Despite a Medform A indicating above average performance and showing no symptoms of mental illness during the interview, entry level separation was recommended based on non disclosure of pre enlistment history. So he was discharged, and they were told to, if he wanted to re enlist into the military, he would need to go through a full psychiatric evaluation to determine whether or not he was diagnosed with any of the following diagnoses that he had been discharged with from Fairmont Behavioral Health. When he was placed in that facility for troubled teens, he was diagnosed with unspecified bipolar disorder, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, combined obsessive compulsive disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and PTSD. The psychologist that evaluated him stated that he went through multiple evaluations, including the WAIS-4, which was a broad range of assessment of cognitive ability, and then he also went through the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, and they found that he did not have any signs of sociopathy, no PTSD, no clinical representation or presentation of bipolar, ODD, antisocial behavior, or OCD, or impulsive aggression, autism, PTSD, or psychosis. And he was all within normal limits. So they said that considering all the data available to me today, it is my professional opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty that Collin Gosselin does not meet criteria for any of the diagnoses of concern in your evaluation request, nor do I see evidence to indicate that other psychiatric diagnoses or behavioral disorders in his current functioning. So this was done by him by after he was discharged from the military, and now he's stating that his mother needs to also come forward and tell the truth because he feels like he's constantly on the defensive. When he and Hannah appeared on The Dark Side of the 2000s, they talked about how Colin was being isolated from the family, not allowed to eat with his siblings or play with them, and forced to stay in the basement. And they didn't really detail what was happening in the basement, but Colin actually said that while he was in the basement, he was being zip tied, his hands and feet zip tied, and then locked in a room with a bed on the floor, cameras, and a bolt on the door. And that he was forced to stay there multiple times for several hours, sometimes as long as a day. And he said to the son, "My mother at many, many times and most of the time became physically aggressive, verbally very ABUSIVE with the things she would say. And obviously that carries over to the emotional side of things where a young child doesn't know any better. So it was very, very emotionally ABUSIVE relationship. And when my mother would put me in the room multiple times, she had zip tied my hands and feet together and bolt locked the door, turned the lights off, and had cameras there just watching me. His dad, John, revealed that he had spoken to the people that purchased the home because apparently he's friends with someone who their in-laws own it. So one of his friends, their in-laws bought the house. And he says the room in the basement where she kept Colin is still there. My friend's in-laws bought our house, and one time they asked me, "Why is there a room in the basement with a bed and a lock on the outside?" It must have just been terrifying for him. So John said that he didn't hear about what was going on with Colin until he got custody of Hannah. So he said, "I didn't hear about that until Hannah told me about it. Once I got custody of Hannah, I think once Hannah knew she was safe and not going back to her mom, she felt she could tell me." At that point, Colin was institutionalized. He also started opening up to the doctor there. And then because I became the legal parent, then they started telling me what he was telling the therapist and stuff. And it was all matched up with what Hannah had said. So they did reach out for Hannah for this interview, and she did not respond. He had been removed from school, and Colin actually said that he was removed from school when he showed up with a bruised ear. He said, "I was telling my teachers things that were going on at home, and after that, I was taken out of school, and I would tell the camera crew, and I would tell a lot of people who were around a lot of what was going on. But my mother did a good job of hiding those things." What really made the biggest change is when I was taken away from school and when visitation to my father was restricted by my mother, and when I was taken away from the camera crew or really any family friends, that's when things really started to change. I had no relationship with anybody. I was feeling isolated from everybody. I had no friends, nobody. John had said that on 9 separate occasions, the allegations of ABUSC were reported to Child Protective Services in the state of Pennsylvania, and every single time they came back unfounded. They would say that someone reported that Colin was being hurt and we found it unfounded. And he provided letters of this and calling it a crock of ish. And John continued by saying, "And when you ask Colin and Hannah, they say that these people would come knocking on the door to the house and get everyone together and talk to them in front of Kate. There were 9 separate incidences where allegations made by Colin had been reported and they were all unfounded. You feel powerless. You definitely know something's going on because it's coming from different sources." Now, Kate's attorney denies all of this because he said if Kate did the things that Colin is accusing Kate of, she would have been investigated by authorities and prosecuted. I call BS on that because Kate had a network. Kate was a white woman that had a lot of power and influence in that area. She came from a highly religious family. She was very well in the like circuit for Christian mothers doing like talking about child rearing. She had a very good solid reputation. And so much like we saw with Ruby Frankie, how many times? 20 times they called on Ruby Frankie and nothing happened until finally one of the kids escaped. In this case, it sounds like Colin was placed in an institution so he could stop talking about what was going on at home. It's really sad when you think about everything that this child has been through. And frankly, it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone if he did have residual anger and emotional issues as a result. Even though his letter from the psychologist said he doesn't meet the criteria of any of these diagnoses anymore, it wouldn't be surprising if he did have trauma, right? From all of this. Colin says there was an incident with his ear that resulted in life changing for him. My mother had a way of talking to people that when children's services came, we never were able to really talk to them one on one without her outside the room, kind of sticking her ear through the door. But yeah, I went to school one day with a purple ear. My ear was swollen and purple and bruised. And my teacher had asked me, like, what's going on? And that's when I kind of spilled the tea about everything. And I told my teacher, and child and youth service was called shortly after that. And after my mother got wind of that, I was taken out of school in fourth grade. I no longer went to school with my siblings. So the Department of Human Services said that they are committed to keeping children safe and keeping safe is our top priority, and any potential allegations of neglect are investigated and handled urgently. They always say that the truth with situations lies somewhere in the middle, right? Kate's denying all of it. She's basically, through her attorney, saying that none of this happened. All of this is a lie. They have proof that everything that he's saying is a lie. The attorney is saying, I knew Kate back then, and if she had to take steps to remove him from the home, then obviously those were needed. In fact, this is what the statement says. I think she did whatever she needed to protect herself and her family from the sum of his troubled behavior as a child. So, not stating that he wasn't zip tied. I think she did whatever she did to protect herself. That's not to say he's got psychological impairment. I'm not a psychiatrist. However, I think if Kate did the things that Colin is accusing Kate of, she would have been investigated by authorities and prosecuted. Additionally, I don't think the Marine Corps saw Kate's post and decided to throw Colin out. Could Kate's post have had some influence? Sure. I think it may have made them delve into Colin's history, but blaming his mother for being thrown out of the military is misplaced. Kate has no interest in saying anything, which is what she's done in the past. Except Kate did say something, right? She could not let a sleeping dog lie. She could not let her son have a moment to share what happened to him without going out on her social media and disparaging him and defaming him when she hadn't seen him since he was 12 years old. And when she made that post, he was 20. She had not seen him in 8 years. It's hard for me to believe Kate when it comes to these allegations because all of the history and all of her behavior prove this to be true. All you have to do is read her book. And there's a book that was written by a journalist that has her journals, right? And in her journals, she talks about throwing Colin into a crib, and she talks about Colin not being obedient and how she scares herself because of what she does to her children. And she openly brags about the spanker and having to use the spanker. And she drove around with a wooden spoon in her car. She constantly resorted to corporal punishment. She had a lot of children. She was at her wits' end, but that does not excuse taking it out on a child. Some of the stuff she wrote about Colin and getting angry at him were when he was 2, and it was because he wasn't obedient enough. This is a woman that grew up with a dad that was a pastor in the evangelical Christian movement, highly conservative, not your average Christian, let's just say. And the room that he was locked in sounds like the prayer rooms that are used at the fundamentalist schools for troubled teens, where if a kid gets in trouble, they're thrown into a room with a bed on the floor and bound. This is happening to kids all over the country in these facilities, and Kate apparently just did this at home, although she denies it. And I call BS on the fact that if it had happened, that they would have investigated because it sounds like she was was put into a facility and she obviously was able to coach her kids to lie. I don't believe Kate at all when it comes to this. If there were issues with Colin in the military, I could understand them discharging him. If, say, he did push a recruit, say his temper was out of control, maybe it was a discharge under the highest caution to ensure that what was in the past was in the past and not real. I don't know if he's tried to enlist since or if he's been allowed to re-enlist. He says that he's coming forward now because his mom is the reason why he was discharged, and she needs to come out with the truth. I can't see Kate ever coming out with the truth. I can't see Kate ever stating she did any of this because, frankly, Kate to me is a pathological liar and a sociopath herself. I feel like Kate has really placed all of her issues onto Colin, and he was the scapegoat, and she placed her need for fame and for wealth ahead of everything else. And truthfully, this is the part that's never sat well with me. Say Colin was as troubled as she claims. Say he did these things. Why then wasn't she going to the facility to see him? Why then did she not go visit him more than twice in 2 years? Why was she not actively involved in his care while he was there? She wasn't. She stuck him there and left him there and just ignored him. Does that tell Is that the sign of a mom that actually is concerned about your child? Because you better believe if my son was going through something like that, I wouldn't be sticking him in a facility and not dealing with him. I mean, for her, it's like the show had to go on, much like Jim Duggar. Brushing away what Josh did, the show must go on. We'll stick him away. He'll go hang out in somebody's, shed. He'll go dig out a pond, and that's life. Like, the show goes on. We hide Josh from everything, and they'll come back and he'll be reformed, just like they did when they stuck him in that facility in 2016 after he cheated on Anna and everything came out about Ashley Madison. It's like these parents are so narcissistic that they can't deal with the issues happening and they just put the problem child, the scapegoat, away. Now, in truth, Josh was a problem child. He was. In this case with Colin, from a very young age, he was the target of Kate's anger. And it's horrible. I don't know if he'll get back in the Marine Corps. I'm not sure. I mean, if that's his dream, he'll probably do everything that he can to get there. With his history, maybe they won't let him back in. I would have hoped that he would have disclosed all of this before, but they're saying that he didn't. They're saying that he didn't disclose that he was in this facility. They didn't disclose his previous diagnoses. Instead, they only disclosed that he didn't have them now. And that's sad. Maybe he was afraid if he put all of that information out there, all of this would come up and then he wouldn't even been given a chance anyway. I don't know. Obviously, it's a complicated dynamic. It angers me that Kate was never prosecuted for any of this. It angers me that Kate continues to lash out at her son that she has nothing to do with and has poisoned everyone against him. And now he's at a point where he feels like he always has to defend himself. But at the same token, I think there is a level of responsibility on Collins' end where if he did push someone and he did get explosive, he needs to acknowledge that because stuff like that happened with his dad. He got into an incident with his dad. He accused his dad of abuse, and John had to go through the police investigation, and that happened in like 2019 or 2020. And John had to put him in a therapeutic hold to calm him down. So he definitely could still have residual like trauma, and that's okay. Maybe if he can't get back into the Marines, he can find a occupation where he can help other kids by using his story to advocate for change for kids on reality television or for the ending of these institutions because it's not fair what happened to him. I really feel for him. So, what are your thoughts about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Bye, everyone.